What's up, Pod Pals? It's your buddy Adam, and you are checking out Podcast Launch Tips. This is the show where I teach potential podcasters, people that may have been podcrastinating a little bit, how to correctly launch a podcast. If you've been wondering, how the heck do I start a podcast? How do I do this correctly? How do I do it the right way so that I can actually build a brand around it or use a podcast to grow my brand? You're in the right place. And today we're talking about one of the zones where people get frustrated, they get tripped up, the podcast intro and outro. So basically, an intro and outro is the 60-ish seconds that you hear at the beginning of a podcast and the 60-ish seconds you hear at the end of a podcast, the intro and the outro. Now, one thing we got to keep in mind, I just got to keep it real right from the jump here. You have to realize that like 90% of people will skip through this when they listen. So they won't listen to it. So we don't need to freak out. Like they'll listen to it one or two times as they get introduced to the show, but then they're just going to go skip, skip, skip. Like how many of you listen to your favorite podcast intro every single time when you could probably recite it word for word? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. I would guess that you don't. So don't stress over this. We do want it to be well done because it is a part of the new listener experience. All right. And I'll show you a few little tricks that'll help shake things up so that it will get people to listen to it instead of going skip, skip, skip. Okay. So that's the first thing. We got to remember that a lot of people will skip this, especially the intro. All right. And then they just won't listen to the outro. Now, when we are forming an intro, you want to think about, all right, there are a few ways to go about this. One technique is to always have like your patented show intro. It's always the same. It's the same words, same music. It's always the same. What I tend to do is I focus on a call to action. Whatever my specific call to action that I'm focusing on for that series or that month or that 8-week time frame, that is what my intro and my outro are about. So that's a little bit different, but again, if you rotate those around, maybe a little different wording, different music, that will get people to listen in as they skip to go, oh, wait a second, this is different. This sounds different. Maybe I need to check this out. If they're a serious fan of your brand, they will. So maybe as you get started, and you could kind of do a little bit of both. So maybe you have a canned regular intro for every single show, and you want that to be just a part of your brand. It's got the music, it's got the same the warm up to the show basically. And then maybe your outro is alternating back and forth between different calls to action. Now, I will tell you that the likelihood of your intro being listened to is greater than the outro. So the further up in the episode, that content gets consumed more often, just on average. Like you can just look at podcast listenership stats. The earlier in the episode, that's why ads in the intro and mid-roll are worth more than in the outro because people tend to not listen to the outro. So that's important to think about as well. All right. If you are going to create some sort of a canned intro, you want it to be 60 seconds or less for both of these, really. Like I like 60-second or less intro. I like a 30-second or less outro. All right. Those are a couple numbers to shoot for. This cannot be like minutes long where it just goes on and on and on about your show and the whole life story. It needs to be like, what is this show? Who is it for? What does it talk about? Let's go. Put some energy into it and launch them into the episode. I like sometimes using what I call an XYZ statement. This is the show where I help X to do Y so that they can Z. So for like Podcasting Business School, this is the show where I help people launch and grow their podcast so that they can effectively monetize and grow their brand. So something like that, a little bit about who you are, 60 seconds or less, Pod Pals. Music, no music, that's up to you. Some people go straight to like they don't even do an intro. They just jump right into the episode. It's nothing pre-recorded, pre-canned. It's like, hey, what's up? It's episode blah, blah, blah. So these are all okay. And you can test all of these. There's no singular right answer. I think the theme, the through line for this episode is don't stress out about it. Try some different things. See what feels good to you. See what your audience responds to. And once you figure that out, do more of that. All right. Next idea. I said it earlier, but I'll say it again. I like a singular call to action. If you're going to do a call to action in the intro, do the same one in the outro and only do one. When you're in the intro, mistake that I see is people, they have it going really well. And then it's like, subscribe and share and hit us up on Instagram and email me and get my downloadable. And it's like 4 or 5 things. Just try to do one. All right. And when you first launch your show, I always recommend hit that subscribe or follow button. Apple went and messed it up. Now we have to hit the follow button, not the subscribe button, but people know what you're talking about there. So then I would talk about in the intro, subscribe button, outro, hey, subscribe button, something to think about, and just keep that as your focus point as you launch the show. Once you get going, a next tier call to action would be something to get people on your email list. So maybe you change up your intro a little bit and you go, hey, I got a brand new blah, blah, blah download. This is what it's for. Here's what it's about. Then at the end, hey, don't forget, pick up your blah, blah, blah download, and kind of wrap up the show with that. Singular call to action, 60 seconds or less in the intro, 30 seconds or less in the outro, and then changing it up to grab attention. Some different ways that you can do this. One thing that I do is I change the first like 3 words that come out of my mouth. So maybe one time it's, hey, pod pals. And then I'll switch it up to, hey, good looking. You'd be surprised at how big of a reaction I get when I just switch that up and people think it's funny. Or like in the outro, I just started using, hey, pump your brakes. Something that makes them, like, as soon as the episode ends, the next 3 words they hear is, hey, pump your brakes for a second. I got something to tell you about. And that's your call to action in the outro. So just changing up the energy. Sometimes in the outro, I'll go, but wait, there's more. And then I'll dive into something. So being funny, a different tone, a different cadence, anything to make them just literally pump their brakes and go, wait a second, this is different. I'm gonna listen to this. Changing up the music. Even when they skip, they're skipping and they'll hear that something's a little bit different, especially if they're power users, power listeners of your show. So switching up the music can work as well, but just making something just a little bit different to get them, especially if you've got, like, you're launching something or something, a really important call to action, switch up the music, switch up the tone, switch up the wording. So that's very obvious. This is different. The chances that people actually listen to that will increase. All right. So quick recap here. Remember that most people will skip your intro, especially, and they may not ever listen to your outro. So don't stress out about it. You can use something like an XYZ statement. I help X to do Y so that they can Z, in the outro being very specific, keeping that under 60 seconds or less, keeping the outro under 30 seconds or less. Same call to action is recommended, whatever that is, in the intro and the outro. That's what I'm a big fan of, is that repetition. Don't give a million things. They will do 0. And then change things up to get their attention. If you've got a new call to action, add new music, new cadence, new verbiage to make them pump their brakes. And these can be powerful. The intro and outro, you can actually get some use out of them when you're doing effective calls to action. So if you all need any help with your show, you got to get signed up for my next podcast launch think tank. I'm doing at least one of these a month. It's a small group jam session for people that are thinking about launching a show. You can get all the details at www.podcastingbusiness.school. And with that, I'm going to send you out into the world wishing you health, happiness, and many downloads. We'll see you next time.